Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Jonah. I am here with Discover, and today we have Kevin Shen. We're super excited to dive into some video and lighting and just building the right studio space. But before we get going any further, please hop in the comments. Let us know if you can hear us all right, if you can see us all right. We want to make sure all the tech side is covered before we get into the goods. Kevin, can you just give a little wave and a hello so we can double check your audio and video there?
Hey everybody, how's it going?
Sweet, it's all sounding good there. For all the viewers watching, please also feel free to call out in the comments where you're tuning in from, maybe how you heard about Kevin or how you heard about Discover, something you're excited to learn today. Also, if Kevin is moving quick, I know he's going to try and share as much as he can with us today. If you have to get up or go to the bathroom or the postman comes and the dog's freaking out, don't fret. There will be a replay available. It'll be emailed to you along with the course offer from today. It'll also be here on our YouTube channel for Discover and on the Discover event page. So no fret, all of that will be available for you later. And if you have any questions during the presentation, feel free to ask them. Yeah, we got Data Professor saying, hi, a long time subscriber to your channel. Love it.
Great to see you, man.
What was Sorry, I got off real. Just if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat while we're going. We will try and answer all your questions, but if you can hold on to them, we will have a dedicated Q&A after the presentation where we can make sure to get through all of your questions then. Let's get going here. Give a proper introduction. Like I said, today we have Kevin Shen, and he is going to be teaching us breaking down the perfect home video setup. Couple things we can expect to learn today. We're going to learn how to create a filming space that connects with your audience on a deeper level. We're also going to walk through how to create texture and depth with lighting to convey a specific emotion that is relatable to your audience. And we'll also walk step by step through how to improve an ordinary filming setup so you can see firsthand how your videos can transform by implementing these principles. A little quick background on Kevin. Kevin is a longtime YouTuber and has helped many people design and set up their own filming studios to make videos and courses at home. He nerds out about making human impact through video and is a huge fan of the saying that a rising tide lifts all boats. Love it, Kevin. Without further ado, I'm going to hand this over to you so we can dive into it.
Cool. Thanks, Jonah. And thanks everyone for tuning in. I appreciate you spending some time with us, and hopefully we're going to make it super fun and interesting and educational for you all to help level up your videos. So yeah, I think you said everything in the introduction, Jonah. Thanks so much for that. I'm excited, kind of feeling that nervous energy as always. So my apologies if I kind of completely zone out as I'm talking. But I hope this is going to be awesome for everybody. So let's just get started. We're going to be talking about the top 3 studio design mistakes that most people make. And we're not just going to stop there. We're going to tell you also how to fix them so you're not just left with a cliffhanger today. And just also a quick heads up, this, for time reasons, is sort of the compressed version of a top 10 studio design mistakes little like video training thing that we have on the website. So if you miss anything too, make sure to check out the recording like Jonah mentioned. And if you want to go more in depth, there's also a video training thing for free you can watch at dreamstudiocourse.com. So with that out of the way, let's kind of just dive in really quick. Oh, hold on. So this is what I call the hostage in a basement look. If you've ever tried to make videos yourself at home, chances are this is probably what you're going to be faced with the first time you do it, or your subsequent times, until you really figure a lot of this stuff out. And I'm here today to kind of show you what's possible, to show you that there's a route that we can go through, a formula, if you know a couple things that you can follow to end up with something that looks like you have your own professional video filming team at home. Like in Hollywood, this stuff with lighting, with camera, audio, and everything, and design, it all takes a team of people, like 5 or more people, just to do all this stuff. But because filming YouTube videos at home or Zoom calls with your clients, because that stuff is very specific to a specific type of use case, we can kind of shortcut that whole process and automate a whole bunch of different things and help you design it around your workflow too. So you can do it all as a one-person team. So just really quick, before we dive into that, I wanted to share a little bit more really quick of kind of the background behind why all this stuff matters. So I really like what a friend of mine told me once when we were talking about video. She said, like, video right now is sort of like typing an email were before typing an email became a necessity, where people thought when email first came out that this was something that you only needed if you were a techie person and if you were a programmer or something. But now in the world, if you don't know email, if you don't know how to type, you can't do anything. You probably can't get basic communication, basic like a bank account or something. All that stuff is now requiring that you have this basic digital literacy. And as the world is moving towards video, I believe, I don't know the exact stat, but I believe a majority of internet bandwidth now is all video content. So if you don't have a video presence, you don't have a way to connect with people at a real human level. And so that's why this stuff is so important. And we want to make sure that you're not showing up as a hostage in a basement because people won't take you seriously. So to really be able to participate in this world of this new online internet, this online video internet, right? You have to be able to show up as a real person online. And the only way to do that is if you really kind of know what you're doing. And we're going to be showing you how to do that today. Some super quick background here. YouTuber, like Jonah mentioned. And a lot of this stuff has been kind of what's helped me to kind of grow my subscribers. And also back when I was doing tech startup stuff here in Silicon Valley, we used a video to help us get the attention of execs at places like Google and PayPal as a no-name startup because we understood how to reach out with the video medium. So super, super powerful. And it boils down to pretty much, if you look the part, you'll get taken seriously. Do you know how to show up in a way that speaks to that human level, right? We make decisions. We think we're logical people, but we make the majority of our decisions from a gut level, from an intuitive, subconscious level. We speak with our, we kind of like act from our feelings. We make our decisions from our feelings and then try to justify them later on. So if you can speak this language with your videos, with your studio, you're going to be in a very good position. So grab a notepad, take some notes if you can, not catch the recording because we're going to kind of go through this fast. So there's just like a lot of stuff we want to cover here. So the top 3 studio design mistakes. The first one we want to start with is kind of from the obvious part first, which is your camera, and specifically knowing the right lens for your camera and the right camera settings for your camera. So starting with lens, a place where most people get stuck is they look at, which lens they want to buy, and it's just very, very confusing because you're looking through all these different lens specs and all these different things, and there's hundreds, if not thousands of lenses on the market. And so what do people do? We end up just asking, say, your uncle who does photography, what lens do you have? And just buying that for ourselves. But kind of like, I like to make the analogy of a bicycle. Just because someone else has a bike doesn't mean it's the right bike for you. Is it a stationary bike, a road bike, a motorbike? Right? You got to know what you need for your studio specifically. And for us, when you're filming, again, these talking head videos where you're relatively close to the camera and you're at home in a controlled space, we have a very specific need where, say, a bird watching lens won't really do the job for you. So how do we know which lens we want to pick? Well, number one, we want to really understand that lenses determine your field of view, right? It tells you how much of your studio you're going to be able to see. So if you're filming videos at home or you're on Zoom calls and you're using like a telescopic lens and it's up your nose, that's not the type of lens that you want to be using. So the way we do this is we look at what's called the focal length. That's just the millimeter number on your lens that basically says how zoomed in your lens is. So this is how we name lenses, by the way. It's the primary number we look at. And in super oversimplified terms, on the left side, you'll see if it's a shorter focal length, shorter millimeter number, you're going to be able to see more. It's going to be a wider shot. On the other side, if it's a longer millimeter number, kind of think about it like like a telescope, it's going to be a lot more zoomed in. So 1 second, I got to take some water. So I hope this makes sense. Again, this is super oversimplified, but it should help you start to understand specifically what you're looking for in a lens. And one piece of advice here, I like to encourage people to see their lens as part of the studio itself. Excuse me. So it's
Kevin, can you hear me quick there? We lost your audio there. Double check if you're muted. So sorry. Thank you everyone for shouting out in the comments. I could still hear him, so I didn't even notice that. Oh,
Are we
we
good?
got you back. We got you back there. Yeah. So if you can backtrack just a little bit, we lost you kind of at the beginning of this slide.
Okay. Sorry,
Thank you
guys.
so much.
I don't know how I got muted. My fault. Where was I? Was I back here?
Yes. Yeah, that would be perfect.
Okay. So pretty much the second step of kind of making sure your camera is correct is the camera settings, right? And so if you're using auto mode, that's a great place to get started. And I think that's awesome that people should start with whatever you're comfortable with to start putting out content or being on those Zoom calls or whatever it is. But if you really want to get those really, really good results, you want to make sure you're using manual mode because it gives you full control and the camera's not guessing what you want out of your shot. Again, if you're shooting a live action sports thing, it's going to be very different from the settings you want in your studio. So to show you what those settings are, this is potentially a little bit overwhelming, but again, come back to this if you can't fully absorb all this at once. But basically aperture, you want to set your aperture to the lowest number possible. So it's counterintuitive, but the lower the number, the bigger that opening in your lens is going to be for light to come in. So we want that opening super big because that's what helps to blur out the background. And again, blurring the background helps us to see your studio the same way that our eyes actually see the world, because we don't actually see everything in focus all at once. So that's why it's super important to not get that digital look by having that camera, having that lens that opens up really big, right? So that's what we want with the aperture. Then shutter speed. Shutter speed is what makes sure that your motion blur looks natural. So if I move my hand like this, you'll see that it's a little bit blurry, but it's not jittery and it's not overly like muddy, right? It's kind of the most natural amount of motion blur that we see. So that's why we want to keep it at shutter speed 1/50. Your ISO, you want to start at your lowest, which is sort of the brightness control on your camera, and then slowly increase it as you add your lighting in your shot. And then your frame rate, you want it to be 24 frames a second. It's the most natural for us to see. It's the Hollywood standard that we're used to. So again, subconsciously relating this to what we see as quality. So again, when we're designing our studio and our space to interact on videos, it's all about creating a lot of these subconscious connections, speaking that subconscious language to tell someone that your content is worth clicking on, that you are worth listening to and paying attention to, that they shouldn't scroll to the next video, and that they can expect that you're going to have something good to say. So again, this stuff is all going to be here in the recording, so you can come back and check it out later. You don't have to memorize all this right now. And a quick couple other extra settings. Autofocus, again, you want to make sure that your face is always in focus, so they're not staring at you out of focus, which is really uncomfortable to look at. And then your resolution, you want to make sure it's at least 1080 full HD or higher. You can shoot in 4K, but this really comes into play where you want to know your audience. Who are you creating videos for? Because if your audience is mostly on their phone, you really can't tell the difference between 1080 and 4K footage. So that's it. My apologies again for just blazing through this as fast as we can. I want to give you as much as we possibly can here and save some time for studio breakdown we're going to do in a little bit, where you're going to see how I would actually give feedback and critique someone's actual studio. And you're going to kind of see a transformation. So mistake number 2 is improper lighting. This probably is the most fun piece of the process because this is that piece that brings out that look, that Hollywood look, that professional style that we all know, but we can't often tell what's going on behind the scenes unless we know what we're looking for. So here, I'm going to kind of show you a little bit of what you should be looking for so you can create that look yourself. So if there's nothing else you remember about lighting or take away from lighting, remember this, that larger diffuse light sources are the most flattering. So I have a flashlight on my table. If I turn off my light, so I have a large light source here, kind of like the one you see on screen. But if I shine a small light source that's not diffusing my face, right, I look kind of like a Hollywood villain. And this sheds all of the shadows all over my face, and it looks really unflattering, right? And so we want to do the opposite, where we want to have a larger light source that illuminates us and wraps us in this soft glow of light to make us look as appealing and radiant as possible. So side note, this is kind of how all of these beauty commercials, shampoo commercials, and these heart-to-heart interviews are all shot. they use like a big, large piece of cloth or a sheet of some sort to diffuse that lighting so it comes from a large area. And so this is what you really want to do in your space. And then the other mistake is people aren't using enough lights, right? If you just have the window or if you just have your ceiling light on, it's not going to do the job for you. So I want to go over really quick a couple different types of lights that you can use in your space so you can start getting some ideas flowing of what you can do. Jonah, do you mind full screening just me for a second?
Not at all. Not at all. Here we go.
Thanks. Awesome. So just to walk through kind of the shots, the different types of lighting in the shot, we have 5 different types of lights. So we have the key light, which is the main light that I just talked about. You want that diffuse, beautiful diffuse, large light source, right? And then, so this is that light on and off. You also want to have something that's on the side. And so this, depending on where you put it, depending on your style preferences, you can really put it in a bunch of different places. But what it does is it helps to create this kind of glow around you, right? And so that helps to set you apart from the background. And it also does a whole bunch of other things in terms of lighting the background itself if you want to, and all that stuff. And then you got a similar one up top, which is your top light. So this is sort of your hair light. It shines on you. It makes you kind of look like you're the featured speaker or the featured piece of like the featured display in a museum where people know, okay, hey, this is designed for me to consume. It's going to be a very nice packaged piece of content, or this is the person who is of interest right here. So I should pay attention. Then you have the background lighting. So we as human beings build relationships around context. If there's no context, you're just this disembodied head floating around the internet. People start to take you for granted and people don't really see you as an actual person they can connect with. And so if you have context, people can see, okay, this person is in this space. I have a human context for who they are. And then finally, we have the practical lights, which are my favorite. They're lights that are part of the decorations in your shot itself. And so there's so many different types of practical lights you can use, depending on the style you want to go for. We can cover this in a little bit too. But practical lights are really, really nice because they evoke a little bit more of that intention again. How you want to set up that initial split second experience for that viewer when they see you for the first time. How do you want them to see you, right? Are you going to be someone who's nice and warm, or are you going to be someone who has a lot of neon stuff? Are you a gamer? A lot of different ways you can design this. So we can honestly go into like down this deep rabbit hole when it comes to lighting and stuff. But just to jump forward, mistake number 3 is the background design. So kind of segueing from the lighting into designing the actual space that you have on camera. Because remember, you are roughly 1/3 of your screen, and your background is 2/3 of that entire viewing experience. Or again, if you're on Zoom calls with clients, that's that experience of them spending time with you. 2/3 of your screen is going to be where you are, where you're sitting, and what else they can gather about you from your space. So we want to make sure that we're putting as much thought and intention into your space as with your camera too. And a lot of people also we all kind of go through this process every time I help people build their studios. That first piece is that of embarrassment, where we've all been there, right? You kind of flip open your webcam and you go, I look horrible. I look like a hostage in a basement. This is no good. I'm screwed. I can never show up on videos. I'm not as good as all the other people in my industry. But that's that first piece of realizing you can do so much with your background to give you that confidence, right? That's why we kind of do our hair or do our clothing or show up to different meetings. Some people like to show up in a nicer car, right? That stuff helps to carry the load of the viewer's expectations for you and helps to build your confidence and helps you to show up a lot more naturally on camera. So I like to tell people a really nice, expensive camera can only help you so much if your space looks like this, right? And so here's 2 ways that we can do that. So this, again, is a huge area of, it's an entire area of interior design. It's a whole career for some people. But to give you some time-tested principles for how you can start making your stuff look way better immediately after you get off this workshop is, number 1, balance, and then harmony. So just to explain this a little bit, I know these sound a little bit like dense design terms. Balance just means that you have an equal amount of intensity on both sides of your shot, or maybe on the top and bottom. You're trying to balance that visual intensity. And so this is basically symmetry. And you can balance out intensity in different ways. You can create intensity by doing things in different ways. So for instance, on this side, I have super intense, bright, but small pieces of light or points of light, right? They're intense because they're bright. And on the other side, I have kind of larger things that are cooler and darker, right? So that's more of an intensity based on size and based on area. So these two attributes balance each other out. And you can kind of do that the same with the top and bottom. A lot of people, they have so much stuff on the bottom of their shot and then nothing else but plain wall on the top. So this is another area where you can add and kind of design your studio to be a little bit more pleasing to the eye. Because you can think about it, you're kind of an artist. You're painting this frame right here, and you get to decide what's in it. It's not like real life where the person gets to walk around and choose what they're looking at. So here you get so much fine-grained control over that experience of whoever's on the other side of that video screen. And then harmony. Harmony is one, especially if you don't have any experience in interior design, like I was when I first started this. I had no clue what I was doing. But harmony is just this idea that your items should make sense in the same space. So if you have, for instance, I like to draw the kind of paint the picture of, imagine, say, a baby crib next to this like beer sign or something, right? That doesn't really fit. And you want to make sure everything kind of fits together. So for instance, just like a quick example, you want to have stuff that, like for me, I want to create the space where people feel comfortable, where it's a little bit more of this intelligent vibe, a little bit more of authority, because I do stuff where it's like teaching. And so kind of tying it all together in sort of like an approachable sense, I have a lot of things that sort of make sense together. Now, if you want the cheat code here for how to do this right the first time and not have to think too much and become an expert yourself to pull this off, you can actually just go look for the style that you like and buy furniture that manufacturers have already classified for you under each design style. So here's just a super basic assortment of a couple of design styles that are popular lately, like the industrial look, mid-century modern, Scandinavian, etc. And so this is just another way that you can sort of shortcut this process. So that's kind of it. Just I wanted to kind of dump on you guys some principles that you can start to understand that this is a process that has a bunch of sequential steps and like a formula. But I think this is the fun part that we're going to do next, which is a studio example. So one thing that I learned once kind of building out this course, it used to just be a self-serve thing where I thought, like, I've helped so many people with their studios. Let me just put together just, my step-by-step instructions. And then I later realized that students loved this piece of me giving them specific feedback. And so that's kind of become the new part of the course now, where we kind of, each person submits their test shots, like Mary here. And we actually draw on their screen every single week to kind of show them what's going on and how they can improve, so they don't have to be the experts. And so I want to share with you kind of one of those right now. And this has kind of just become kind of a class favorite. And so I hope you enjoy this part of the process. So this is Mary. Thanks so much to Mary for being cool with me doing this with her studio shot. This is her week 1 shot. And she's a YouTuber. She teaches financial advice on YouTube. And so she is trying to build a business around teaching people stuff. And what she wants to do is be that authority that people take her seriously and can charge, whatever she charges for her products, and really show that, it's worth it to watch her content and invest in her products and stuff. And so coming from that, a couple of things I notice is, number one, the first thing, again, speaking from that subconscious level, is that camera angle. And when I told her this, she was like, oh, wow, I didn't realize the camera angle was anything to think about. I just kind of put my tripod on my desk and tripod happened to be this high. But if you notice, we as the viewers have been put into the space by Mary. We don't get to choose how we see her. She puts us there, and we are now looking down at her. And so this poses a problem where, if we're not careful, people literally start to look down on us, right? This is how subconsciously we look at someone who we are teaching, right? Like a kid who's looking at us for advice. And so what I told Mary is, okay, think about how your camera is placed. See if there's a way that you can bring your camera down a little bit to just understand where that viewer is looking at you from and where you want them to be based on your specific needs, right? Are you trying to be more relatable or more of an authority? Are you trying to be like a comedy routine? And so kind of the top-down angle is more of a comedy type thing. And so for her, we kind of helped her fix that. And you'll see in a second how her shot turned out. But the next thing I also noticed is she didn't use enough light sources. And the one lights that she did use, you can see here, I don't know if it's too small, but you can see the reflection of a ring light in her eyes. And she showed me from the behind the scenes, she just had a ring light mounted, the way that typically you see people do when they just start YouTube. They buy a ring light and they put their camera in it because it looks like a video setup. And they put it right in front of their face and they go. But like I mentioned before, it's not a large diffuse light source. It's just almost like a point light because it's so far away. And so you get this deer in the headlights look where you're completely washed out and flat, right? Yeah, come on, sorry. Right, so completely washed out and flat here, where you see not really like there's no detail, around the edges. So she just kind of blends into the background, right? On the other hand, what I would say is she's missing like a bunch of different light sources to help cut her out, like you see in maybe my shot, for instance, right? And so I told her how to place different lights in a way that wouldn't show up on camera and where she can position herself. The other thing too was if you look at the composition here, she's not exactly centered, right? And that's just one of the easy things that you can fix, centering yourself. And it makes it so much easier on the eyes because subconsciously, when something is well designed, we pay attention more because we think, okay, this is designed for my consumption. It's going to be easy because it's pre-chewed in a sense. So everything you can do to make it super easy for the person's brain to digest what you're giving them without having them to think about what they should be digesting. One of those tactics is just make it super obvious where their eye should snap to. And just by centering, it's very powerful to be able to do that way. So I'd say move yourself more to the center. And again, you're going to see that in a little bit, how her shot turned out. And the other thing too is her background design. Her layout, she just kind of shot it based on where her desk was and hadn't really thought about designing her layout of her space, of her workflow, of everything that she has, her entire production setup, designing it around productivity and around specifically what the camera would be seeing. So she shuffled a little bit around all the stuff that she had. And then the colors too, right? So here, the entire color scheme wasn't very well designed. It wasn't intentionally designed. And so we have this greenish, yellowish tone across the entire frame, which is not very visually appealing and just gives off that very specific digital, I shot this on my iPhone in my basement look, right? And again, we're trying to move away from that. So kind of taking all of that into account, this is what Mary ended up with, right? So you can see the difference between the left side and the right side. She did a lot of what we talked about just a second ago. She moved the camera down. And you can see the difference, right, between these two shots. She also centered herself. So here you can your eye immediately goes to her eyes, which is the focal point of whenever you have video and you want people to pay attention, you want them to be focusing on your eyes. And then she added her light sources, right? You can kind of see how she's like, we have that top light we talked about. Oops. We have that top light we talked about where she's now cut out from the background. She has a side light. She has her key light properly positioned. So all this stuff sort of contributes to this huge transformation that she's made because she understood these principles. And like I like to tell people, if you understand the principles, you can achieve them with whatever gear you might already have or your space, because everyone's space and situation is unique. Right? This is one of those things where a question I get a lot of time is, can I just learn this on YouTube? But this thing is specifically a very unique case-by-case thing for everybody. Everyone's room size and layout and skin tone and even your height of how high you're sitting in your chair, all this stuff matters so much, and your brand, all your different needs and circumstances is so specific to you that it's really about knowing the principles and applying them, right? And you can kind of see here that she's added more color and everything just looks so much more cohesive. And if you saw both of these, the first one, I hate to say it like this, but if you saw Mary's face like this on YouTube and you're scrolling, you might subconsciously think this one would kind of be a waste of time to watch, right? But the second one, you go, oh my God, this looks really well done. She's probably put this much time into her studio because she's also put this much time into her content. And she probably has, a team and everything in a world-class system for surfacing the best content for me. I want to watch this. right? And so again, she doesn't need a huge world-class 5-person team to do that because she set everything up to work for her in her space, and it's designed around her workflow. And so, yeah, I could go on and on about this. It's just so much fun to nerd out. And but I wanted to leave you all with one big piece of advice. If there's any kind of encouragement that I would leave with you, is to recognize that whenever you're trying to make anything that doesn't already exist in the world, right? If you're not step by step exactly copying something that's been done before, again, your studio is unique, your use case, your budget, your gear, everything's unique. You're creating something that has never been done before. And that's part of the creative process where you have to deal with a little bit of uncertainty. And every student that I work with, every person, in the beginning, they don't really believe that they can do something like this, right? Most of them have never had video experience before. And most of them don't really have any design experience, but they're really good at showing up for their audience when it comes to whatever their business is, whatever their content is, right? They have stuff that needs to be shown and shared out there. And so I tell them, just be prepared. The process of building a studio is that of iteration, right? You can always repaint your wall. You can always return that gear. And I tell them, just push forward because you're going to be discovering the studio that you need to create for yourself. So the journey looks like this. You try, some stuff works, some stuff doesn't, and then you try something new. And you iterate your way to that studio that every student who's finished this, and they look back and they're like, man, I'm so proud of their studio. They could not have predicted how it would end up at the very end. So if you're anything like me and those students, I want to give you some encouragement that that's part of the process. And just because you find it scary or intimidating or you feel a little bit lost, don't by any means let that make you think that that just means you can't do video, that you for some reason are stuck with the hostage in a basement look, that you just are not good enough to create this content. And so, yeah, that's just something that I myself know so well too before I figured all this stuff out. And if there's anything we can do for you to help you shortcut that process, like we did for Mary, like you saw in this, just earlier, we're here for you, right? And so that's why we're here doing this workshop. That's why we have this course to kind of give you very specific hand-holding, right? I used to do this on YouTube, but I wasn't able to give one-on-one specific advice and feedback to everybody. And here's just like a little quick video of kind of the behind the scenes of our class. And it's a chance for us to go one-on-one specifically to give you advice on what you should do in your space. And this has been, again, a class favorite and one of my favorites where you submit your test shots and I record what we did today. Like with Mary, I record that for you. So you don't have to be that expert and you can just follow what I tell you to do and start to understand in your space, specifically with maybe you have a specific type of lamp fixture or a specific, weird nook in your wall or something to help you understand what you should do. And there's Mary. And yeah, it's just so much fun. And I really love this part of the process because we get to work together and we're not just, you're not just watching a YouTube video of some stranger where you can't ask them any questions. So that's that. And yeah, again, just some encouragement that none of these people were professional video people, but they had a heart for serving people. And that's really what I want to help amplify for you guys. And so people just take you so much more seriously when your studio looks like this, right? And that's it. There's the website if you're curious, if you want more information on the course. And I'm always here if you guys want to get in touch. I try my best to answer any questions I can. I've been introverting super hard, but I make my best effort to connect with everybody. And yeah, you can email me if you have any questions. And yeah, I wanted to save some time for us to ask questions. I know you all might have some questions. We ran through that super fast. Thanks for bearing with me.
Yeah, but you shared a lot of information very effectively. I love it. Thank you so much. First, right off the bat, it is so cool to actually see the before and afters. I've watched countless YouTube videos of like how to do this, but you don't really get that gratifying moment of seeing the after and it's stunning. Whether it's conscious or subconscious, you're right. If you saw one or the other, it would be all the difference between me clicking one of those YouTube videos or not. So it's
Yeah,
really
appreciate
cool to
that.
see.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's all honestly, it's the people. I just tell them what to do. It's the people in these shots who've done all the hard work.
Sure, but it shows. It's cool. It just shows that it can be done because I know it can feel futile at points, kind of like you were saying.
Yeah, it's super fun.
Yeah.
Kind of like watching a magic show. You
Right.
just like at the end, you want to see how it's done.
Right. For everyone watching, feel free to drop your questions or comments. I know we had a couple already coming, but we're about to do a proper Q&A here. I did want to give a second for those questions to pop in. So, Kevin, I had a couple questions about the course itself. And sorry if you mentioned it, but I like to reaffirm these things. Is this a lifetime access course, or is it like limited? You have a certain amount of time, or how's it feel for a student to go through the course as far as workload?
Yeah, so we have the course content, right? All of
Mhm.
the pre-recorded stuff that's been professionally produced for you. That stuff is yours forever.
Nice.
And then we have that extra piece where again, people really wanted that specific help. Like, here's my test shot. Can you tell me what to do next? What am I doing wrong? Why does it not look the way I want it to? And so that piece, I can't give you lifetime access to me.
Yeah,
I'm
of course,
sorry.
of course.
But yeah, so it's 6 weeks. You get 6 weeks of access to all the office hours. It's just come with questions and we're going to help you out. And you get to use a couple rounds of your test shot feedback during that process too. Again, dreamstudiocourse.com has all the details. So if you're ever confused, that's where people can look for that.
Awesome. And then I wanted to lead with this question, which is a little bit about the course. Well, the question wasn't about the course, but I'm curious if you covered this in the course as well. But Virginia Crawford had a good question earlier, which is how about for those of us who don't have a DSLR and are using phones and tablets for filming? That question came up specifically when you were talking about lenses and those kind of aspects that you wouldn't have if you have a phone or a tablet. So I'm curious if you have any advice on that. I know getting a good camera is some advice, but if you can't do that, how do you work around those limitations?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Virginia. Thanks for asking. So first and foremost, I think you're going to learn so much by just getting started
Hmm.
that you wouldn't know before. So it's again navigating that uncertainty, right? It's iterating your way. If you can't get a DSLR right now, don't let that stop you. You're going
Hmm.
to be able to put together your background. You're going to get your lighting right and all that stuff. It's going to help you a lot. But really, if you want to get that final step of the way there to really have that world class look, there is a very distinct look that you're going to get from an iPhone or webcam compared to an actual DSLR or a mirrorless camera because you have that interchangeable lens, right? Not to get too into it, but the way that the physics of light works, if you have a small sensor with a small lens, you're not going to be able to get a really nice blurred background,
Mm.
right? And so again, the way that we see the world as human beings with our eyes is things are blurry. And when we look at something else, the focus shifts,
Mm.
right? So that's the reason we can see the digital look. And that's why I call it the
Oh, we lost your audio there again, right? Oh, now
sorry,
it's
I don't
back.
know what's happening.
No, so long as we can fix it, right? That's all.
Awesome. Thanks for catching that. Yeah, I saw it
Yeah.
pop up this time. But yeah, so that's why you have that what I call the hostage in a basement look, that hostage in a basement on a webcam, right? Because it's part of that is that digital look that comes from an iPhone. And you can right now you can sort of do an in between. You can use your iPhone to there's like software that helps to detect and blur out the background a little bit. But again, it's gonna give you that digital look because it can't fully
Mm.
crop you out perfectly.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's like that'll get you all the way there.
Right.
But if don't let that stop you from getting started. Does that make sense?
If I know like aperture is a big aspect of getting that kind of cutout. Are there specific apps for the iPhone, or I know they give you control over that, but I've never understood if that aperture control is completely digital or analog. But if you're stuck with that, do you have any iPhone apps you typically go to versus like the built-in one?
Yeah, that's a good question. I personally haven't done it myself,
Hmm.
but I think there are. Shoot, I forget the. Send me an email, and
Okay.
then I
Yeah.
will. I'll get back to you, Virginia, because I think there's like some students in the course experiment with it, and I can ask them to see what camera apps they do that they use. But you can tell it is a little bit digital, and so I always just try to like push them to like getting that camera. It's
I
actually
agree
not
with that.
that expensive when
Right.
you really take into account a lot of the other things. But yeah, send me an email and I'll get back to you.
Yeah. Well, and I know at this point, my sister just got a Sony 6300 for like $500, so it's really gotten affordable to have a decent camera.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
but yeah, here, sorry, we're nerding out on that one question, but let's keep plugging here. Diane Lange, sorry if I'm saying that right, or Lange. I bought a fabulous background. What do you think of using them or green screens?
Yeah, that's another great question. So I'll kind of answer this kind of like in those two parts that you have. So like having a background, that is going to, number one, I think be awesome. It's way better than a plain wall. And it's sort of like a halfway, I'd say, because a big piece of what we're trying to do with our studio is make it very natural on the eyes. And we want to make it feel like someone walked into our space, and our whole space is designed to make them feel very at home and kind of receptive to connecting, right? It's like the difference, like I say, between walking into a public restroom and like a dingy bus stop at 2 a.m. with the LED lights versus a nice warm cabin with the fireplace, soft music, right? You're in a defensive mode in that place where it doesn't fully feel like a rich environment.
Mm,
And so that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to create depth with the background and everything. And so the reason I bring that up is because when you have a background, it looks nice, but it doesn't look real in the sense that your lighting won't fall on it correctly,
mm,
depending on what type of background. Like I'm thinking like a brick like pattern or something. The lighting is going to be off. And so it's going to look a little bit weird to that person, and it might not fully put them into that fully relaxed connective state. If you have something that's more of a photography backdrop, it's going to be more stylized. So that's more of a personal preference.
gotcha.
Yeah, with green screens, again, it depends on, your audience best. You know the niche you're trying to serve and the people and what they need from you, and the norms in that industry. So a lot of times I caution people against using green screens because it is a very overdone kind of fake look that, again, the lighting is not going to fall on you correctly. It's not going to be accurate. So it's going to look very faked.
Gotcha. Okay. Here's a question that is very close to my heart as someone who wears glasses. Any quick lighting tips for those of us who wear glasses?
Yeah.
Struggled with reflections and shadows on my face. Neela Patel, I have struggled with this a lot, so thank you for asking.
Yeah, great question. I wear glasses too. I just don't happen to be wearing them right now. I think the number one thing is understanding. Again, it comes back to the principles, right? And then kind of from there, backtracking from these first principles to figuring out how to move forward. And so the reason you're getting these reflections in your glasses is because the angle at which the light is coming in, plus the angle of where your face is turned, it's bouncing that light straight into the camera, right? And so one super basic way to do it is to move your lights a little bit farther off to the sides.
Hmm,
So in order for you to get that reflection, your head would have to be turned way more toward that light, which, once in a while on video may not be that huge of a deal. If you just happen to like sneeze and they catch some glare in your eyes, that's fine. But if you want to eliminate it, you want to start getting some what's the word, anti glare type of lenses on
hmm,
your glasses. That helps a little bit. You also want to, again, get a more diffuse light source, because when you think about how big your light source is, if you have a flashlight, so pardon me, I'm going to shine this into the camera, right? But because it's such a small light source, all of that light is concentrated into a small place, right? And if you took the same amount of light and spread it across a larger area, you would be able to illuminate yourself equally well, but you would end up with way less glare because it's not concentrated.
hmm.
So your glasses wouldn't look as glary because every point on your glasses would be lit with less light.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Okay, that's it. So it really, I'm hearing like diffusion and bigger lights are a big help, and then just placement, playing around with that.
Yeah. And then the
Cool.
other thing too, your lighting is this tricky thing where you can light the relative brightness of you and your background, and then you can take your camera and change the brightness level of all of that together.
Mm,
So if you light yourself super intensely and then darken your camera to compensate for that, you're going to have these really harsh lights on you, right? But
mm,
if you do let the camera do the work of brightening up your scene and turning your lights a little bit less bright, you're going to end up with a similarly bright lit image, but you're not going to get as much glare because there's not that much light in the shot. You're going to
Awesome.
have downsides and trade-offs, of course, as you do that, which I won't get into here, but that's an option you can play with.
Yeah, I just love all the different things you can play around with to get to that spot. Yeah, let's keep going here. Just plain cheese. Love the username. Any tips for if you are working with bright colored walls and still want to create a more dynamic lighting setup?
Yeah. Could you elaborate on that? What do you mean by want to create a more dynamic lighting setup?
Well, maybe just until just plain cheese can hop in and specify there. I think I understand, which is like you have this dark background, so the lighting really pops out and it doesn't like invade the space or compete with you. Whereas even like where I'm dealing with a brighter like white wall, it feels like any light I put might compete with me. So is there kind of any tips for like how you work around being in front of a brighter background in general?
Yeah, I think you actually did a great job with your background because
Oh,
you have
thank
that lighting, right? That casts that glow on the back of the wall behind you, and it kind of frames you in this really creative way that says, "Hey, look here," right? And I think, yeah, there. So a lot of people ask me about the darker background, and so this just happens to be the way that I went in my studio because I don't have. I've got trees in front of my window, so I can't do the really nice daylight look. Which, if you have enough daylight and you have a space that looks like a daylight space, you can do it with a bright background too, right? So depending on what your space actually looks like, you can kind of craft your lighting around that to make you still pop regardless.
Gotcha.
And a lot of that comes into play with, lighting yourself with the hair light, the side light to give yourself more depth so you don't sink into the wall behind you if you find yourself the same color as the wall, especially.
Gotcha.
And in that case, you can also like brighten or darken the background a little bit so you're not the exact same color as the wall.
Right. When we did get a little specification there, they're saying so my key light spills too much light on the background, so everything in my space is kind of the same color. Oh, and then apparently, okay, so I kind of understood what they were talking about.
Yeah, one thing you can do with your lights is there's something called a grid. So a grid is, let me actually take it off of my top light right now, just so you can see it.
Huh?
So a grid is something like this. It's like a honeycomb. This is a very small version, but you can
Oh,
get one for your big light. And so it helps it's like a series of tubes, so light doesn't go off to the sides. So when you put this, a larger one of this over your key light, that won't spill as much off to the sides, and it'll be a lot easier for you to control where that light goes.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah, I hope that makes some sense.
Yeah. Yeah. We got just a couple more questions here, and then we got to wrap up just for time's sake. But Virginia Crawford was asking any camera recommendations. So I assume if you're ready for that next step to upgrade to a camera, any good places to start there?
Yeah, it really depends. I hate to say this, but it really depends on you and what you're looking for out of your camera. And I know it's kind of a cop out answer, but it really kind of depends on what your needs are. Like, what is your workflow like that you're designing for? And do you need it to have different functionality? Do you need it to be able to use for Zoom calls too?
Mm.
Are you going to be doing some intense color correction, stuff like that? But to not leave you completely hanging, I really like the Canon M50 Mark II.
Hmm.
That's something that I find just works really well off the bat. But yeah, there's some caveats that really depend on your situation, and then kind of picking the right lens for that too.
Right.
So hope that helps.
Yeah, yeah. I wanted to tack on a quick question there, which is if you had a set budget, say $1,000, would you lean towards getting better lenses or a better camera right up front?
Yeah, I would say, man, okay. So I hate to be that guy, but it also depends. So if
Yeah.
you are very, if you know for like if you're very, if you're in a difficult budget spot, lenses are going to hold their value way longer than cameras. But also just overall, your camera is going to mostly allow you to do these technical features of what you can plug it into, how much resolution and stuff you're going to have in autofocus. But the lens is going to give you that quality look.
Mm.
Right? The camera is just the capture mechanism. The lens is the thing that like transforms your space into something capturable.
Hmm.
And that lens is probably that biggest piece. So I would say for most people, investing in the right lens is going to be super important.
Love it. Love it. Okay, we got just a little time for a couple more here. Patrina is asking, would you suggest matte, eggshell, or satin finish for wall paint instead of glosses?
Oh, I read that as glasses. Okay, yes.
Yeah.
um,
God, yeah.
so yes, I would suggest kind of going with something that's the least reflective, because you want your wall to sort of absorb the light in a way that doesn't create glare, and you want it to kind of gently fall on your background. So here, honestly, my space, I feel like I could have even done more with the background here, but I have very just flat matte paint, and because of that, you don't see any hot spots on the wall, because when you have kind of reflective paint, it gets really difficult to play with, because everything close to the light is going to be very, very reflective and bright, and everything away from it, it's gonna be very obvious that you have this hot light source right next to the wall, and it won't feel like an immersive space. So I'd say go matte if you can.
Cool. And then one more question here, which we kind of touched on earlier, but I think is just worth reiterating, which is just, is a tablet good enough?
Yeah, and I'm assuming good enough for filming with the camera, right?
Yes, let's assume that. Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So again, it's kind of this. You're gonna get the similar issue with the a tablet as an iPhone, right? You are gonna be able to get started, and there are some ways to sort of hack around the limitations. But the main thing is, with the phone, you're working with a really small lens size and a small sensor size. Both things contribute to it looking very digital. Just matter of fact, it's going to look very digital. And so if you want to get that look, depending on how you define good enough,
Right.
good enough to get started, yes, absolutely start learning, but good enough to get to that level where people see your content and they say, wow, this looks like masterclass, for instance. You're not going to be able to achieve that masterclass or Hollywood interview style look. That makes it look like you spent a lot on a production team to film your content, right? With a tablet or an iPhone or
Right.
webcam.
Right. Well, and I mostly just asked that question again because I appreciate that you keep honing in. Just still get started with whatever you have, and you can work on it down the road. Because yeah, I know it can be so daunting when you just look at this giant Amazon cart full of stuff you need, and you feel like you have to have it before you get going.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Because again, it is an iterative process where it's very scary. Like it's not just scary; it's impossible to know what you're going to need later down the road unless you first try the first thing. For
Right.
instance, like you won't be able to put your lights in the right spot until you have the camera placed there.
Right.
Because if the
Right.
camera's in the wrong spot, you're going to see your light stands in the shot. So you kind of have to just be willing to iterate and do step by step, and just try things out. And if you're waiting on your camera before you can do anything, I'd say kind of experiment with what you have and then come back and tweak everything else.
Right. Love it. Well, we have to wrap up just for time's sake here. But first off, I did want to call back because we didn't spend too much time on the course. But for everyone watching, the course link is available in the description of the YouTube video. It'll also be emailed to you along with the replay. And Kevin, one more time, can you just call out what the pricing is of that and where they can find that course and maybe other courses from you as well?
Yeah, it's at dreamstudiocourse.com. And the complete course where you get access to me and like we're actually going to get to walk through your questions and everything and get feedback, that's $8.99 right now. We're going to be upping the price soon in the future. And we also have the digital course, which we call the light course now. It's just all that without the hand holding. It's just the pre-recorded stuff. Both of those right now come with this bonus extra camera course that I used to sell separately. But for at least right now, you're going to get that entire camera course too, to make sure you know how to operate your studio after it's done. Yeah, it's 6 weeks worth of office hours and direct help from me. But some people actually finish within 2 weeks.
Wow.
So it's like, yeah, we wanted to bake in time for, if you need time for your gear to ship after you purchase it. And some people, life gets in the way. So we're like, hey, let's make it 6 weeks to make sure you get the help you need. But yeah, any questions? Happy to hop on a video call, like a super quick little video call, or answer over email.
Awesome.
So
And
yeah.
we have your tag in your name there, but where else can people find you? Where are you typically most active as far as social media and stuff? Oh, we lost your. Why is it?
Sorry about that.
We'll figure out someday why that's.
Yeah. But yeah, I'm on. You can message me on Instagram, Twitter. What are the other socials? Facebook, I guess, YouTube. Yeah, that's pretty
Cool.
much it. And then
Yeah.
email.
Yeah, love it. Well, thank
Yeah.
you so much, Kevin. I hope you had a good time. I learned a heck of a lot. I got a bunch of notes already I'm going to get started working on. For everyone watching, thank you so much for joining us today. If you like videos like this, you learned something today, hop in the comments, let us know something you learned, show your appreciation for Kevin spending his time with us. And please like and subscribe to the Discover YouTube channel. We're trying to bring more folks like Kevin out, teach us valuable information, and share little nibbins of their course that we can enjoy and use every day. Kevin, before we totally wrap up, I did want to ask, do you have any last parting advice, whether it's lighting related or just in general for people getting started on really making their studio go to that next level?
Yeah. I'd say just don't get discouraged. Again, a lot of this is the psychological piece
Mm,
where it's so difficult to pull the trigger and just try something, and so yeah, and if I can play that part for you and encouraging you and kind of ensuring you that, hey, you are buying the right camera before you drop hundreds or thousands or whatever on gear and lighting, definitely would love to help you guys out. And yeah, thanks so much for hosting, and thanks everybody
of
for being
course.
here. This was honestly a real treat to get to nerd out about this stuff with you all. Hope you guys got something out of it.
Oh, God, it was so valuable. Thank you so much, Kevin.
Yeah,
And
thanks
thank
for
you,
hosting.
everyone. Yeah, thank you, everyone, for watching. We'll see you all again soon. Have a wonderful day.